Yay, yay. Here we are again.
I'm so happy to be here.
Hello, everybody. I love seeing the little number go tick, 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 tick. It's like the party's on.
Right.
So everyone joining, please drop where you're tuning in from. It's really cool to see where everyone's tuning in. We'll see who gets the gold star for being the earliest and the latest. Right now, Bethany's winning for
Okay, we got
earliest.
Portugal, Nigeria, New York, Malaysia, London, Nigeria, Maryland, Barcelona. Okay, yeah. Danielle, we say this every year. We gotta take this on the road. We gotta go to these countries. Berlin, Mexico, Wales,
Mexico.
Uganda, Philippines, Minneapolis, Vegas. This is incredible. I love
It's
to
so
see it. Thank
cool.
you all for spending
DACA.
your weekend with us. This is beautiful to see. We'll just let these, oh my goodness. Oh, I can't. Toronto, Nigeria,
It's so
Detroit, Rwanda. This is amazing.
it's
Mexico
so
again.
awesome. Oh my God. Oh,
Madagascar, what? Okay, y'all are incredible. Love to see it.
coolest community. Wow. Look, it's still
I'm
going.
just keep looking at all these places. Like,
I know my eyes
yeah,
are on the chat. I'm like, right, we probably need to start
actually, let's start.
talking. Yeah. So with that, hi everyone. Welcome to the Essentials, free online classes, free on navigating the photojournalism industry and beyond. This is our fifth season. Let's high five, Polly, Bethany. Fifth season, and it's all been made possible by partnering with grassroots photo organizations working toward inclusivity, equity, and access in the media. And those organizations are the Everyday Projects, Black Women Photographers, and Photo Wings. My name is Danielle Biasana. And in addition to my work as a photojournalist, I'm also a community team member of the Everyday Projects, which is dun, 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 a global community of visual storytellers, all committed to using imagery to combat harmful misperceptions and to rise above persistent inequality. Yeah, photography can do that. I'd like to introduce my co-host, the incredible, the one and only Polly Irungu, who is the founder of Black Women Photographers and who is doing the work every single day to support and elevate the voices of Black women and non-binary creatives.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And again, this is one of my favorite projects that we do every year. And so excited to be doing this with you once again for season 5. And I see these countries are still coming in. This is just incredible. Okay, we got to do this next year somewhere. I'm hoping, I'm manifesting this right now that maybe season 10, we can take it international.
Yeah.
Anywho, and just super grateful to be doing this. And again, like Danielle mentioned, this wouldn't be possible for free without our incredible partner, Photo Wings. Without you guys, we want to be able to make this accessible to all who are tuning in from everywhere around the world. So thank you so much, Photo Wings, and thank you, Danielle and Everyday Projects, for all you do for the industry as well.
Aw. Well, yes, super happy. 100% agree with the 10-year. Like I say, Madagascar, let's go somewhere awesome. And yeah, we can't wait for these amazing classes and speakers. You can also see some of my colleagues' names here too, who are helping with the, I need to slow down. I need to stop. I need to slow down on the coffee. Who are helping with behind the scenes. So thank you so much to Rebecca Gibeon and Austin Merrill, who along with Peter DeCampo are the co-founders of the Everyday Project. So they're making sure that Polly and I just get to talk. They're doing all that behind the scenes stuff. So thanks to them.
And yes, and this is obviously, you guys know what this is, the Essentials, but as Danielle mentioned, we are on season 5. So that means we have 4 past seasons that you can watch and tune into and replay for free on our respective websites. Go to the everydayprojects.org, go to blackwomenphotographers.com, replay the past 4 seasons for incredible gems, again, touching on every aspect of the industry. And this weekend, we have an incredible lineup of speakers who will again present their tips and tricks for navigating this industry, from safety in the field to the risks of AI to sustainability in your field. I'm just really excited about this weekend in particular. I feel like it's very on point with just how this industry has evolved. And at every session, you can feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. No question is too small to ask. That's why we're here virtually, just to create that space to ask these questions, because we're all trying to figure it out. So please drop your questions in the Q&A box at any time, and we'll have lots of time for Q&A at the end of every session.
Yes. And on that note, these are all of our social media handles. So we post the videos online, as Polly mentioned. So take note of all that. And I am seeing something new happening in the chat here, Polly. Some folks are saying what season this is for them. So we would also love to know, yes, are you a repeat audience member? Let us know.
That's amazing. Yeah,
We love that.
Third. Somebody binge watched all 4 seasons. The first season, welcome. I love to see a lot of first seasons, which is great. We want to continue to bring new audiences into this.
Yes.
So please check out our sites and replay the past 4 classes. We do have them in translations in other languages. I think French and Spanish, I believe. Yep. Also, if you need that translation. And at the end of this weekend, we'll be also transcribing these sessions in other languages too.
Yeah. So with
that, one of my favorite artists of our time. Did I already say favorite? Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to have Bethany Mollenkof here, talking about something that we all, of course, are trying to navigate and figure out how to make our work sustainable, how to make a living off of our work. So with that, let me try and do Bethany justice and introduce her. Bethany, again, like, you are such a treasure, and we're so lucky that you're kicking off this weekend for us with your inspiring vision, drive, and grace, and how you juggle it all as a mother is just incredible. For those tuning in today, if you do not know this incredible person, I'm about to like fangirl over some more. Bethany is a photographer and director whose work explores themes of motherhood. And like I said, she's a mom on top of all of this. Just incredible. Representation, gender, and identity. Her creative process is both documentary style and experimental, influenced by her background in photojournalism and painting. This combination enables her to craft visuals that balance careful photojournalism, that balance careful composition with authentic natural storytelling. Bethany works with leading brands that you may have heard of, Apple, Nike, Airbnb, and her editorial work appears in publications like the New York Times and National Geographic, and there's obviously a million more that I can name. And those works that she's published are represented just across different publications. And she's a graduate of Western Kentucky University with a degree in photojournalism and art history. Her work reflects a deep sense of purpose and human connection. And yes, my friends, that is what you'll see here today as Bethany uncovers how to create a multidimensional practice that not only lends itself to creating dynamic work across different genres, but also provides various income streams for a sustainable career. She'll let us in on how to approach and secure clients, how to navigate client expectations and your creative vision, networking, and how to position yourself for success in a variety of visual storytelling fields. Okay, with that said, Bethany, kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. Let me share my screen and let's jump right into this. All right. Are we seeing that? Are we feeling good about that? Yay. So I'm really excited to be talking to you all kind of about the art of versatility is what I'm titling this. And I'm really diving into building a multidimensional creative practice. I think that this is really vital in this day and age because we know that the world's always changing. And so we as creatives have to adjust to those changes. So thank you so much, Polly, for your beautiful introduction. And I kind of want to give some background because I know you all don't know me. So I kind of want to discuss where I've come from, where I'm going, how I fit into the industry, and hopefully give you some great takeaways. So I want to take you back to college. I was studying classical studio art, and I was spending hours every day drawing in the studio. And I really liked the light and the form, but I was so frustrated. And I realized at that point that this was not the path for me. I did not want to be a studio artist. And that didn't seem like a sustainable career path anyways. And so this is where I realized I needed something more dynamic, something that allowed me to engage with people and the world around me. And that's when I found photojournalism and photography. I graduated from Western Kentucky University. I moved to California. I started working at the LA Times, and I worked there for 4 years. And after that, I really wanted to get out and explore. With this background in studio art, I wanted to be able to sort of combine my love for visuals with a little bit more experimentation. So I started exploring different genres, and I kept coming back to portraiture and personal work. It's funny because in the time leaving the LA Times and really getting myself established as a freelancer, I was doing kind of all types of things. I did beauty videos. I traveled around the world with a really small team as a producer. I kind of was just trying to get myself in every different scenario and situation where I could learn something new. And ironically enough, as the pandemic hit, my creative practice actually expanded. And I started working commercially, directing and exploring multimedia art and blending those documentary roots with that commercial energy. And now I feel like I'm pretty solidified in that path, working in multiple mediums, creating boundary pushing narratives for all different types of partners. I like to think of clients or people that hire me as a partner. These are organizations or jobs that partner with me, that come alongside me. We work together to create something new. So, what is a multidimensional practice? I think I want to start there because it's very broad. And how can you develop one? So for me, having a multidimensional practice means breaking free from defined styles, formats, or mediums. It's about bringing the skills I have from one area into another. For example, I use the storytelling experience I gained from documentary, from working in a newspaper, that fast-paced environment, the quick deadlines, the problem solving, the thinking on your feet, to elevate my commercial projects now. And for everybody, it could be a little bit different because everybody's doing different things in photography. So simply having a multidimensional practice means you are taking from the different areas that you're working in and being able to sort of swap around and figuring out what your strengths are, to create the best work possible and attract the people that you want to work with. So the skills that I use from my journalism work is the deep listening, understanding context, really telling a story, not just creating a pretty image. I want to humanize my commercial work because I think that there's so much power in the visuals that we see every day. And so as a commercial photographer, I'm using the context, the understanding that I have from my journalism work to transfer there. I also use a lot of my personal projects as testing ground for different techniques. I'm always pushing myself to be creative and to really try new things. So I want to go through some case studies for you, so you can see how you can bridge the gap between different genres of your own work. How can you leverage what you know across different types of photography? So I've had the chance to work on these intimate, narrative-driven editorial projects to these large client-focused commercial work. And I know that people might think that these worlds seem very different, but they actually teach you so much about each other. And shifting between them has made me a stronger photographer and director. And I think that when we can expand our mind and think about our careers as this like long journey of learning and curiosity, and something that we can engage in actively, then I think we can sort of break away from the idea of just doing one thing and one thing alone. So let me jump into some case studies to kind of show you how I've used personal work that is field commercial work and back and forth. So something that I love to do, and I've always done this just as like creative expression, is working in double exposures. I love layering images. I love the experimentation, the process, the art that comes through, and layering different things and putting them together and seeing what turns up. So these are some of my double exposures that I just did on my own personal time. And I was actually able to incorporate that into a campaign that I worked on for Advil. This is just a quick little snippet so you can kind of see how the aesthetic that I have honed in my personal time was able to transfer over into a commercial campaign. This is a photograph that I created while I was at the LA Times. I was photographing community in South Central where I live, and this was prom. And I love the use of technology, how they're, people are on their phones, but the story and the focus is on people. And that, I think, is very definitive of my style and the work that I like to do. It's very human focused, and then everything else takes a backseat. And we can see that when it comes to also my big commercial campaigns. So I worked on a campaign for T-Mobile, and this is all about, cell phones and cell service, but the focus is the people and the storytelling within the people. So you can see how that practice in my photojournalism world can transfer over into that storytelling for a client like T-Mobile. Here's another personal portrait that I did. This is my friend. I photographed her a lot. Again, in my South Central neighborhood. And I was approached by Apple to photograph my hometown. Apple commissioned more than 30 Black photographers to capture and share their hometowns with the world through their unique lens, all shot on the iPhone. And so I was able to photograph my neighborhood. That's my neighbor on the left. And this was on billboards around our neighborhood, which was awesome. But the images also went to the Super Bowl, which is also amazing. So you can see how my love for just photographing my community and for photographing people that I care about resulted in something as cool as the Shot on iPhone campaign. So your vision is the glue. So I'm gonna move that. Do you guys see that little weird bar on the top? I don't know if you see it, but what I'm getting at is your vision is the glue. Being a multi-hyphenate doesn't mean you lack a clear style or expertise. In fact, your vision, intention, and guiding principles serve as the thread that connects all of your work. So whether it's editorial, personal, or commercial, your unique voice is the tie that holds everything together. It's what makes your work your work. So how do we get these jobs, right? How do we bridge that gap between what you're working on, what you care about, and clients or partners? I think building a personal brand is key. And I used to always be like, well, branding, I'm a human. And I think what I mean by building a personal brand is being so rooted in your purpose and in your storytelling that people can recognize your style and your intention. I think clear messaging will attract the right people to work with. And this is going to set you apart from different people in the industry. I think if you root yourself in your vision, your purpose, and your goals, whatever that type of photography is, that will lead other people to want to work with you. So for you, it's really defining who you are and what you want to do and what do you want to be known for. Then you can transfer these skills over across different mediums, across different formats. So I think it's really important that when you're building this portfolio, highlighting not what you've done, only what you've done, but how you can solve problems for the partners that you have. A lot of the time when we're working with, even journalism, we are solving a problem for someone. We're creatively coming up with a plan to create the work that they need. And that's the same thing when it comes to commercial work. It's kind of the same thing if we're working in general. It's about showing your unique voice and how you can meet their goals. So it's really figuring out how your vision can match up with your partner's needs. I think it's always important to have a strong vision, but balance it with your client's objectives. You're not just hired to create beautiful things. You're hired to solve problems for them and tell stories that connect with people. I'm going to walk you through a couple. Not a couple. I've already shown you a couple, but I'm going to walk you through one personal project that I feel like really epitomizes my journey and how that has gone through a lot of different iterations. So I'm going to start off by talking about, this is a project I worked on in Alabama. I'm still working on it. This is like my biggest passion project, and it's looking at and documenting Black birth workers in Alabama, specifically the rise of midwifery. I started documenting this in 2018, 2019, and it has been something that I've cared about. Midwifery was outlawed in Alabama for 40 years. And so I wanted to document this reinstatement of midwifery and the Black women that have been working in the state with horrific maternal mortality rates. So this project was my passion project. I did receive a grant. I began putting the work out there, which in turn, I got a grant. I was going to go back to Alabama in 2020, which I also found out I was pregnant. And then the pandemic, obviously I couldn't travel. And so I was really like spun out by the pandemic, by being pregnant myself and not being able to go work on this project that I really cared about. So I started documenting my own story. Photography has always helped me make sense of the world. And it was really challenging to be pregnant and isolated in the pandemic. So I started just creating images of myself because I really didn't see representation of what women were going through, what it was like to be pregnant, what it was like to navigate this healthcare system. So I really wanted to create images to fill this void. Also, a big motivator for me was creating images for the archive for my daughter to understand this insane situation so many people found themselves in. And so it was actually the day that I was going into labor, I got an email from National Geographic saying that I got a grant to finish this work. Then I guess it was like in 2021. So after my daughter was born, I got a call from the New York Times and they were like, hey, can you photograph all of the faces of mothers who bore the burden of the pandemic? And it was a business article about 15 different moms who either had to change careers or become the caregiver for their children. And I actually wasn't in LA at the time. And so I was like, hey, I actually don't have childcare. I can't fly back to LA at the moment to photograph these women. What am I going to do? And so I actually photographed the whole campaign remotely. And it was a really interesting way of interacting with these other moms. It was also really intimate because I was calling them on the phone and then like photographing them through my phone. And I think it was a really amazing experience to I kind of felt like I was living their stories too, because I was with my daughter, she's napping, and I'm like on my phone, like photographing these women that are also trying to take care of their kids. And so my lived experience really informed even just the formatting of this story. And so again, pushing yourself to be creative and problem solve through this. Like I really deeply wanted to tell this story and I needed to figure out how I could be somewhere without actually being there. And so the whole campaign, though it's not a campaign, but the whole story was photographed remotely. And then that also segued into a project that I worked on for New York Times called When Does Life Begin, where I was able to be a little bit more abstract with this idea of a very controversial and very difficult topic to tackle because it's very nebulous. But a lot of the work that I'd already done really informed the visuals for this to make this more expansive and more suited to the topic, because there isn't one path that is the exact answer. And so a lot of my images reference that and reference kind of my experience as a mom. And then to sort of wrap this up, to talk about this as how does this transfer over into commercial work? This was a campaign that I was able to work on for a company called Twill, which is a healthcare company. And they were looking at the psychological transformation that happens for people that experience pregnancy and the mental health issues. And so we were looking at prenatal and perinatal and postpartum, so the different stages. And I was able to cast real women going through these experiences. So I was able to bring that documentary journalism background to photograph this campaign about pregnancy and healthcare in a way that I think really humanizes the storytelling. So lean into your creative path. I think it's easy to think there's one way to do this or a correct way to do this, but I think it's really important that you are strategic and open to new opportunities. Stay curious, keep learning, and never lose sight of why you started, because I think those foundational like hopes and dreams and desires are the things that guide you regardless of the medium and format. It's really your why. And from that why, then you can start exploring all of the amazing and cool tools that are out there. Those things shouldn't be intimidating. They can be intimidating. And it is hard. Like, it is challenging to learn new formats. It's challenging to learn different styles and ways to work. But I think to stay nimble, to stay engaged in this industry across the board, whatever that might be, I think it's like really, it's just a lot of perseverance. And I think it comes from your authenticity. And I think it's important to realize that you don't necessarily have to bend into an existing market. I think your unique style and your unique perspective and your unique life experience, you know, we're talking to a lot of people around the world. I think where you're at can be such a amazing part of your story and why you do the work that you do. And so trusting that process, trusting your vision, and embracing that creative journey will start attracting the right partners and opportunities that align with your vision. It's really putting yourself out there and showing what you want to do and being really clear about that, which is hard. It's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to show work that you know, are working on quietly alone. But I think the more you can express yourself and really show what you can do and what you want to say, the more people can attach to what you're doing and partner with you. So there's joy in the process. This squiggly line would be my journey. So thanks.
Brent, oh my goodness. Bethany, I know you can't see the chat while you were presenting, but people are just like blown away by you and your work and the way you tell stories. And then, like you said, deeply, deeply human, like connecting. Somebody says clapping. Great presentation. Like, and you know, somebody was mentioned how they're also working on a project on motherhood, and you helped them just like have an epiphany moment. Like, just beautiful work. There's a lot of great questions coming in the Q&A box.
Love it.
If you have any questions, again, please drop them in the chat. We have like about 30 minutes to tackle these key questions.
I'm gonna just block this light.
Like, no, go ahead, do your thing. Oh my goodness, the love is just pouring in the chat. I know.
Bethany,
you guys see why I was fangirling earlier?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we were all behind the scenes like, oh my God, she's so amazing. Like, how is it? Sometimes I'm just like, how, like, can I just like your brain? Like, can we like wrench your brain for an assignment? Like, is that possible?
Like, throw my brain away. Like,
yeah. You guys are so funny. No, I really do think like I went to like such a traditional photojournalism school where it was like, this is what you do. And then you go work at a newspaper and you do that. but like, I just think that that path doesn't exist anymore for many people. And that's really, it's hard. It's hard to figure out your place in the industry. It's hard to figure out what you want to do. But I think that that is also part of the journey. And like, be fearless, like engage that process, because that's where the work comes from. Like, I don't think it's easy. Like, this hasn't been like an easy journey. Like, becoming a mom and still trying to be a photographer, that's not easy. Nothing is going to be just like easy, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. It doesn't mean you're not on the right path.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of goes into the first question, and there's a lot. And I also just want to make sure, I thought it was so cool. Someone said about your project, oh my God, I remember this. I had this article in my research binder in undergrad. So you have inspired so many people with your work. But yeah, so kind of, we're going to start at the less like nuts and bolts. So kind of going into what you just said, like sometimes it's scary to create work that's outside the box, or that's, that you think may not work, right? Like sometimes it's just easier to do like what works. So how have you touched on this towards the end, but maybe you can kind of go into a little bit more. So how have you developed the courage to try new things? And someone says, I'm also trying to be a multidisciplinary artist, whether that's engaging with photo or video. What are the challenges that you had to face navigating from one medium to another on a project basis, apart from learning the medium itself?
Yeah, learning the different mediums is challenging and intense, and like technically it's a lot, like trying to figure out different cameras, just even how different formats work. That's challenging in and of itself. So I would say like practice a lot at home, like practice if you're like, oh, I really want to, shoot video, or I want to direct, like figure out ways that you can start doing that on your own and not wait for someone to hire you to do it. Like figure out how that works into what you're already doing and then start adding skills onto that. So for me, I like to try to add on, like this past year, like lighting was a big thing that I wanted to add into I really wanted to get better at studio lighting because I'm such a natural light photographer. And so it was just trying out different things, like, okay, do I like on camera strobe? Do I want continuous lighting? Like, what is it that I want my images to look like? And then practicing that. So I think it's really figuring out and doing it one foot in front of the other, not just like saying, oh, I want to do all these things and then getting overwhelmed. It's just like taking it one step at a time and choosing one thing to tackle, try it out. If it resonates, not, and then keep going like that. Just make it like break it down really granularly and then just one foot in front of the other is my advice for that.
Is that how you also like approached building? Because you mentioned like branding, like, oh, I hate saying like I'm a brand, I get that too. I get that feeling too. Is that how you also like approached building yourself as a quote unquote brand? Like what advice do you have for that, for those who are trying to get themselves more established, more seen in this space?
So for me, it's funny because like I like to just say out loud the things that I want to do. Like, I like to just tell myself, like, I'm a director. Okay, I'm going to be a director. I'm a director. Like, so that's what I started saying, like, in 2019, because I was like, I know I want to start directing. And I was like, I don't even exactly know what that is yet, but that's what I want to do. So I just started saying, I want to direct. I'm telling people that, telling my friends that, telling people that I collaborate with, like, I want to direct. I want to try this. And then people can start being like, oh, Bethany said she wanted to try that. Let's try this, like, or I want to edit, or I really want to shoot a celebrity, or whatever it is that you're really like wanting to do. I think even saying it out loud to yourself puts that in your brain and like routes that neural pathway as something that's possible. And then you just start pursuing that. So, and then sharing the word, like sharing the thing, it's really vulnerable. Like, this is not I think this career is really vulnerable. And so even posting things like on your Instagram account, like, that's what I mean by a brand, is like sharing who you are and what your creative practice is, because it's a practice, which I love that word, because it's like nothing is solidified. It's like this ongoing reworking all the time. And I think inviting people into that opens up doors that you might not have known were there. Like even this year, people are like, oh my gosh, are you just doing commercial work? And I'm like, no. I love documentary work. I can do the big campaigns, but you can send me by myself and I will go and like love my life and do photojournalism, classic photojournalism, so it's interesting how you have to kind of reposition yourself and tell people over and over again who you are and what you can do for them. So I think that's really important.
Yes, that is awesome. Like visualize, make it happen. Like you said, kind of not like sometimes I feel like, of course, in this industry, like imposter syndrome, we all have. And so the fact that you have like the courage or, you're just not shy about like, hey, I want to try this thing. And then it opens up all these doors in your community with people, who are around you to like make that start happening. So instead of like feeling like we are imposters or we can't do this thing or, just be open about it. Like I love that. And then things start to happen. So you mentioned big campaign. So when you had your first like big commercial gig, your big, your big campaign. I mean, the stakes are super high, right? I mean, you photographed Obama and Eddie Murphy. I think I'd be like hyperventilating. So how do you stay calm? Like, how do you even navigate these situations where the stakes are super high? How do you do it?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think it's, day to day, it's kind of that idea of the imposter syndrome. I like to just, instead of being like, why me? It's just, why not me? And like, why not? And nothing, we're not saying like, I think my work is really important. I love it, but it's really about connecting with people for me. And it's really about showing up as my authentic self and knowing my craft really well. So I know how to do this. I know how to create, like something's going to go wrong. No matter what the shoot is, something is going to go wrong. Camera's going to mess up. SD card's going to fail. Like already going into it, knowing that there's probably going to be something that's going to go wrong. And then grounding myself in the fact that I trust myself to problem solve through that. I know I can figure out what's next. And then at the end of the day, if I've treated people the way that I think is good and right, and I've tried my best, like that's all we can do. And so it doesn't really matter if it's like this huge celebrity or my neighbor. It's like, how do I show up in the ways that I think are the most powerful? And that's like caring for people. And then trying to tell something that's true and real about them. And so that's how I go about everything that I do. And it's I try to be as vulnerable as possible. And like, you can see that even telling my own stories, like even photographing my own pregnancy, for me, it's part of my expression. And as an artist is to say like, here I am, this is who I am. It's not always the most fun, but it's also the deepest part of my practice is like putting myself in those positions to be like, hey, I want to do this, or this is what I'm making, because I think that opens up doors to other people. And it's just like the experience of your life. Like, this is my life. All the stuff that I do is my life. I want to enjoy it and grow and become a better person.
I love that. And we have some questions about like, how you even get these clients. So what part of it is you pitching yourself to these brands and clients, and how much of it is them reaching out to you?
I think it's been a mix. I think like it's funny because like most of the things that you're like network, brand, like I never resonated with them. And even I had a professor who's always like, what does your work mean? Like all these things I've been so slow to understand them because they just didn't make any sense to me. And so getting a job for me, it's like been putting out the work that I want to put out there in the world, that I want to create more of. And then really figuring out like who is doing that work. Like, okay, so say you want to photograph a sports story. Oh, I love sports. I love athletes. Okay, what client out there? Is there a publication? Is there a newspaper? Is there a magazine? Is there Nike? Like, who is it that you want that work to live with? Like, who do you want to partner with to make that? So really asking yourself, like, then how do I position myself to get that job? who is working at those companies? Like, what are the other photographers that might be working with this client? Like really asking yourself what's the end goal with the work, or what's the first. I feel like that's like foundational to understanding. Like this year I've been saying, okay, I really want to do a sports campaign. So I did a test shoot with my friends and I hired some models, and I'm like testing out the idea of like, this could be for this client, and then you do a test, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And by doing the test, then it kind of proves out an idea. Like even with the test I did, I realized like I was getting so caught up in making the visuals look cool that I like forgot the storytelling aspect of it. So I was like, I don't like these because it doesn't make any sense. There's no story. So it didn't work for like a couple of the images are cool, but not what I would want to do for a client because I want to tell a bigger story. So I think testing is really important. Testing out ideas, quite literally using your camera and testing it, and then figuring out who out there is hiring people to do what you want to do, and then positioning yourself to get those jobs. So a lot of it is strategy, a lot of it's marketing yourself in those ways, and really thinking about not just waiting for clients to find you. How do you put yourself in front of them, so they can say, oh yeah, we know Holly does this amazing portraiture. Boom, we got her for this campaign. It's really that type of positioning and strategy.
So just to kind of break it down a little bit more. So
Yeah.
when you say like, are you literally like finding the emails of, because in the photojournalism world, it's like, oh, let me write to the photo editor. But like,
Yeah.
how are you writing to people? Are you asking to meet for a coffee or a Zoom call? Like how, because I'm wondering, is the process similar? Is it different? Like you're navigating a lot of different worlds here. So like, yeah, just kind of break it down a little bit more. Like, are you writing to them? Are you creating a booklet that you send in the mail? Is it everything?
Totally. It's kind of a mix of all of the above. So a lot of the commercial jobs, you're working with agencies, you're working like there's a million different ways you can do commercial jobs. And there's not just one commercial, there's corporate, there's a million different ways that you can do photography. And so I'm always trying to figure out who's hiring, who is the person that's hiring for this job. So most big brands have an agency that they work with, and the agency goes and finds the talent. And so I'm represented, so I have reps that I can work with to be like, hey, I want to work with this company. How do we figure this out? And they help me find it. Before I did that, I was really like just doing the research myself, LinkedIn, figuring out who works where and how I can position myself so that they see me. I tend to not like, these people are inundated all the time with emails, and like asking a big person at Apple to get coffee is like not like, that's intimidating, and you're probably not going to get your foot in the door necessarily. But I think understanding like other photographers that have worked with them, getting insight from them, and just trying to get yourself seen. I think visibility with a good website, nothing makes me like scream more than I see someone and they don't have their location on their website. Because even I hire for things, for projects that I work on, or I need a local photographer if I'm directing something to partner with me, that I'm like, what's their style? A lot of people don't have their location on their website. A lot of people don't have like where they work, where they're available to work, or like an email address that actually works. These are some basic things, but accomplished photographers can have these issues. And I think so making yourself the easiest person to hire is incredibly important. Like being available, like social media presence, even though like, it's not the most fun all the time, but having your social media out there and then having a website that's working, two very important aspects of this whole thing. If that helps, is that more granular?
Yeah, that definitely helps. And don't worry, y'all. There's like somebody said run to my website. Run into my social media. I can't.
Just
That
say
was
where
me.
you are in the
That
world.
was
It's so
me.
helpful.
Yeah, someone said running to my website, and I was like, running to my Instagram. I was like,
And some of our past classes have touched on some of these aspects. So, just because of time, we won't get into the nitty-gritty of some of the things. And even some of our upcoming classes will touch on this too. We have a photo director who will share what she looks for when hiring and what she sees as a photo editor. So don't worry, there's more of that to come. Just real quick, just because you briefly mentioned this, I know a lot of people have this curiosity as well, because it doesn't happen overnight. How did you get into representation?
Yeah, that's another like interesting topic that I get that question a lot. And I think it's really important to understand that representation can help you, but it's not going to be the thing that like changes your, I mean, maybe it could change your life. Maybe it has for someone, but for me, it's recognizing that I got to a point where having a rep was going to take off some of the mental load and some of the like, blah, like computer stuff that I really don't enjoy doing. I think my biggest advice to people is figuring out like something I see with younger photographers is not, or people that don't have, I want to say young because whatever that means, but people that might not have a rep is not bidding on jobs correctly or like getting the right budgets, like not knowing how much you should actually get paid for work. And so people sell, like give away their rights a lot of the time. So a rep is really there to sort of help you navigate contracts. Yes, they will bring in work, but the world is continually and always changing. And so I think to be ready for a rep, you have to be making enough money that it makes sense to pay someone a chunk of everything that you make. A rep isn't going to just like bring in jobs for you that, you know, you're now living the high life and just laying back and not doing anything and just being like, okay, they're not going to just hand you stuff. Like it's a partnership again, and you are paying this person. And so for me, when I was going about thinking about having a rep and wanting a rep, I met with different people. And for me, again, it's that holistic, like, where are we going? Do I care about you as a person? And is this beneficial for both of us? And we have the same objectives for my career. And am I willing to pay you a big chunk of my money to make this make sense? And so I think less getting hung up on a rep and more thinking about, are there resources out there if you don't have a rep that can help you become better at your business, better at navigating contracts, navigating, you know, how much you should get paid? Because those are the things that I think can be really useful.
I
Shout
really
out to all my
appreciate
friends that had more experience that helped me before I had a rep.
No, thank you so much for your transparency on that. Just diving right in, because a lot of your work, we've talked about this, is human connection that tied to it. Even with some of your personal work, how do you go about finding people for this? And how do you then, like you mentioned with your own work that you've done, the test shoots, like how do you go about finding people? And do you always pay them, or how do you go about just all of that?
So depends on it, like depends on the topic. I think for my personal work, like my birthing stories, that has just been very organic, and also using all of my skills, my journalism skills, to report out this story. I'm kind of neurotic about like really actually reporting out my personal work. I want that to be a deep like look at this. And so I want to be an authority on that. I don't know, I care about it in such a deep way that it's not just like, oh, I found this person, photographed them. This has been years and years in the making, because I'm like obsessed with what I'm doing and I want to understand it on a very deep level. So I think once you really get into that reporting aspect, then you just start meeting people and you figure out who to call, where to go, and that sort of comes in place. When I'm testing with models, sometimes I pay them. Depends on if it's a swap. Sometimes I'll trade. Like you can use these pictures in your portfolio if you're a dancer. And then, you know, so it's mutually beneficial. I never want to just photograph people and it not be beneficial for everybody. I think that's the same. I think that's why when it comes to like some of my personal work, like photographing these midwives, and I care about it on the level of like, I'm not just coming in and photographing and being like, I hope this turns into something. It's like, no, I'm going to get this work published because I feel like I owe that to them for letting me into their space and into their life. Like I am working so hard to get this work out there and seen because it has a bigger purpose than just like my personal work. You know, it's like a partnership and a collaboration. And I care about the story deeply, but they're the ones living this experience. So how do I get that published or in a book or something? Like there's a motivating factor behind everything I do, not just like, yeah, you just doing it to do it. You know, it's like personal work. I guess I say it's less like feeding me as like a ego thing. And it's more like, oh, this is the thing that I feel so called to do. And I'm going to use my channels of influence to get that out into them. If that makes sense.
Yes, I'm like, dang, just like one mic drop after the next. And just if you think Bethany has said it all, she said something else. It's just like, I just love listening to you talk. It's like all of these golden nuggets, just like, yeah, because I think sometimes like, anyways, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but I just love what you said about like using your channels to get those stories out there, because at the end of the day, that's like what we're trying to do. If you feel passionate about an issue, it's like, let's try to get it out there.
Yeah.
As opposed to like feeling like shy or apologetic or, you know, I just love that sort of like, no, like, of course I'm going to get those stories out there because this is what is meant to happen. So, love that. So we have some, a couple of questions that are sort of similar in nature. So I'm just going to kind of rattle them all off, but like, how do you, a lot of people have some questions about like, how do you begin even conceptualizing a project? Is it a visual idea first, or do you start with a feeling or a thought? And then similarly, and you kind of touched on this a little bit in the presentation, but like how the person asked, how do I consistently pursue my style or creative path without getting caught between what style I want and what style I want to get inspired from? So a lot of questions about like that creative process.
So I would say like my creative process, it's constantly changing. I like to consume a lot of things that are not just photography. Like I like to, I don't know, like my daughter's been painting and I'm just like so obsessed with her color palettes. Like she's really good at color and it's been really inspiring me. And I like, actually a lot of the colors for my deck were from a painting she used, but I've been using the colors. Like I've been photographing her paintings and I've been using the colors because I really love them. So I don't know what that means, but that's like, just I'm pursuing that because I like it and it's very appeasing to my brain. So some of the work that I do or like where my ideas come from is just very organic. It's just like part of my life, being open and curious to what's around me. Sometimes light, but honestly, like I'm a super nerd and have ADHD. So I love to deep dive into ideas, like reading as much as I can, really understanding a topic. And then a lot of the time the visuals will flow. And something that I have to push myself to do is like stop reading and stop trying to understand this thing and then go out and experience it. Because sometimes I think I get a little bit too like intellectual about something and I need to just get out there. That's why I think journalism also was such a great format for me, working in a newspaper, because you're just like jumping into something, having to learn it really quickly, understand it contextually, and make something from it. And so I try to push myself to do that because it can be really easy, especially if you start getting more commercial work, to just wait for jobs to come to you and you're not actually engaging in your practice. And so for me, it's like whatever that looks like for you, just start. Like just start. If it's you need to go for a walk and just look for textures to photograph, like just start making things, because that is where things come from. Like it's so generative, the practice of being a photographer, that a lot of the time you just need to like get out and do the thing. And once you start doing it, then the creative problem solving, the creative thinking can come from actually doing the things versus thinking about doing the things. So I would say it kind of marries the two sides of my brain. And then inspiration and these things come from, you know, the world that I'm living in and the things around me.
You know, that actually translates into a good point that I see a question here about you mentioning like do the thing and how you said earlier in your presentation that it's not always perfect. Some things don't go smoothly. Somebody asked, would you please share about a technical challenge you've had in your work and how you overcame it through the technical choices you made?
That's a very specific question. I would say like I'm not a big techie person. Like I'm not a tech head. That aspect of photography has never been like a big like thing for me. But I would say like technically, when I was working in journalism, I was having a really hard time making images that felt the way that I wanted to. And I was like feeling really frustrated by some of the aspects of lighting and like just being like, I know that this should look better and it's not looking the way I want it to look. Kind of references the question before too of like, how do you bridge styles? And so I actually just started shooting a bunch of stuff on my phone because I was so annoyed by carrying around this camera and like trying to light stuff that looked ugly. And then I was like, this is not what I'm imagining. And so I just started shooting on my phone. And that's when I could actually, and like, not that I don't know how to use my camera. I obviously know how to use my camera. It was just the limited capabilities of the phone camera really helped me express the thing I wanted to express. And then I was able to take that back to my actual camera and then do that, you know? So sometimes I think technically it's like reapproach it. Like if this isn't working for you, change your lens. If that lighting isn't working for you, try maybe a disposable camera. Like just try different things to then like try to figure out how, like, where is the breakdown? Is it the technology or is it you or is it, you know, like really figure out that technical aspect of it. I think sometimes just means like like shifting, shaking it up, trying something else. And just a lot of experimentation and like a lot of like, I'm actually right now having to go rent this camera and I'm like, all right, I guess tomorrow I'm going to sit and like figure this out because I need to use this camera for a shoot. And I don't know it perfectly. I've used it like once or twice before, but technically I need to like actually do a little bit more on it and then I'm going to go for it. So don't be afraid to just jump into it. YouTube is awesome to learn technical things. Like I use YouTube all the time. And then you just try and fail and try and fail. And like, that's the fun of it. But it's actually not that fun to fail and like be bad at tech stuff, but you get better at it. You get better at it. And that's the fun of it. The fun part is getting better.
That is real. That's real. I do see some folks with their hands raised. As a reminder, just drop your questions in the chat, in the Q&A box, because everyone will be, as a participant is muted. So just drop, if you have a question, just drop it in the Q&A box in these last couple minutes we have with Bethany. You know, there was something that you mentioned earlier on that I see a good question here about going back to the whole branding and just navigating that world. For example, in your presentation, you shared like deeply personal yourself, like, you know, it was deeply personal stuff about your motherhood journey. How do you, I guess, navigate how much you share on social media versus like, you know, protecting your work and knowing that, okay, you share this project, it led to an assignment at the New York Times, or you don't share this and nobody knows what to hire you for or think about you for this work. Yeah.
Great question. I think that I'm actually like a pretty private person. So for me, I don't share things that I'm not ready to share. Like if I'm not ready to have a picture of my, you know, exposed pregnant belly on the internet for anyone to see, then I'm not going to share it. I think it's really important as part of your practice and as part, like for that personal work, for you to be, and maybe other people are different. For me, I need to be at a place intellectually and emotionally that I'm ready for other people to be a part of it. So I actually didn't share on social media that I was pregnant because I was not ready to do that. And so that project came out after my daughter was born. And actually Andrea's on here somewhere, I think. Shout out to Andrea Wise, because she was my photo editor for that. But I wasn't, and I like worked with her on this after, you know, after I had my baby. And so, because I was not in the mindset, like as the pandemic's happening and like everything has been going crazy, I wasn't like, hey guys, shout out to like being pregnant. Like that was not at all how I approached this. I kind of was like, I'm photographing this as an archive for my daughter. I know that this is important, but I'm not like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. And then I saw the Nat Geo had this grant about the pandemic. And I was like, you know what? I actually think I could share in this format. And I had pitched it to one other place that like with an editor that I had trusted, but it was like kind of, those are my two things. And I was like, if it doesn't go, if neither of them want it, that's okay. Cause I did this for myself and I don't even know if I'll ever share it. It was like very much like, this needs to be the right partnership to share this work, and preparing myself to know that I'm opening myself up to people looking at my physical self and my life and knowing what I wanted to say about it. I think that's important. And some people, you know, get on the internet and cry. So everyone has a different journey. That's not my journey. I like to have processed something before, so I know how to talk about it, because I don't like to open myself up to that type of internet like critique, or, the internet's crazy. So I try to be very thoughtful. And because I am a mom and I have a child, that like I have to be thoughtful about her representation in the world. It's not just my art, it's like her life too, and my family's life, so I just try to be very thoughtful and like have gut checks with myself. Like, do I feel comfortable with this? Would someone else feel comfortable with this? I always ask myself, like, even when it comes to my daughter, like, would I want someone to photograph me in this situation and put it on the internet? If not, if I don't want that of myself, then I don't do that for her. And that kind of ripples out to like the other people I photograph, and everything that I do. I just try to be really, really thoughtful, and prepared for whatever that kind of takes form, because sometimes you just can't control how work is received.
Yes, Bethany, like something that's been so inspiring, and I hope again you have a second to kind of glance at the chat. Everyone has been super, super inspired by what you're saying, but you're so intentional. And I think sometimes we can get into this pattern of like, well, what does the client want? What does the photo editor want? Like, what do I want? And so I love that you're very intentional about like, okay, I'm not sure, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to creatively, troubleshoot. And like even myself as a photographer, sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. So I guess I'm just going to like do the thing that I know, And so I'm very inspired to be like, wait, like we can continue to learn. We can like go out and figure something out. Just because we don't know how to do it now doesn't mean we can't learn. And so that's been really, really inspiring hearing that from you. And by the way, I love both of your brains, your intellectual brain and your creative brain. So we have about 5 more minutes for questions. And I think what would be awesome to hear from you is we have a couple of people asking like questions about fear. So what is your biggest professional fear, or, failing is part of the process, but have you ever also had a fear of like, again, a high stakes campaign, but maybe it didn't match like what they were looking for? So how do you navigate fears? And then what's an achievement, large or small, that's brought you joy in your photography journey? So two sides of the spectrum: fears, joy.
Yeah. I think like fear is a really interesting thing. I think for me, this year has been incredibly challenging because I didn't create enough space in my practice to do work that just fed my like love for photography. I was doing a lot of different jobs, but I was feeling a little bit disconnected from my process, a lot disconnected from my process. And so my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to figure that out. Like, I think that there's different journeys, right? And that social media can make it look like everyone's just going, yeah, got work, I'm doing great. And that's not the reality of most people's journey. And so I never want it to seem like, you arrive at some point and everything is great. Like, no, there's fear all along the way. I think it's a matter of looking at that fear. So this year for me, the fear was like, am I going to be able to like keep expanding my practice? Like, I kind of laughed when I saw this, when you guys were like, do you want to talk about a sustainable, like multidimensional practice? Because I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that's hilarious, because that's been like my thing this year, is really being like, okay, what is the next iteration of my career? Because every career ebbs and flows, and phone stops ringing, is ringing all the time. Like, there's not one like consistent like tone. It's always different. And so this year I've just been feeling like, wait, I really need to get back to, I need to have the mental space to get back to some of this work that I just am so passionate about. And I haven't been able to make time for that. And so I think a big fear was, am I going to actually be able to do it? And I think I have. I think I have. And that's really, really rewarding. And it's not even worth that. I think like 2 people have seen it, but it's worth that I'm just like, I had to make it. I had to do it. And I finally was able to get to a place that I feel really good about it, and I'm ready to share it. And it's taken me way longer than I thought it was going to. And like, it's been a battle, like pulling teeth, even though I love it, but it's been very, it's been work, just shoveling this thing to make it happen. But I feel very, very content that I was able to sort of push past the fear of like, can I do this? Am I going to be able to reinvent this part of myself? And yeah, that's constant. Like, ask me tomorrow. You know, fear is just, I think you just got to like take your fear and be like, hey, buddy, I see you. You little fearful little human. We can do this and keep moving forward. Like, it's not going to just be gone, you know? And that comes up in every different aspect, you know, of your career. And then what was the second part?
Well, yeah,
Something
you
that,
kind of, I'm wondering if it's linked, but the
yeah.
question was like, what's a moment of joy that you know that you've experienced in your photography career, even though it was kind of linked to the fear.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think honestly, like, it's wonderful to, like, I love working and collaborating with people and having campaigns released into the world, and you know, people like, yeah, we love your work. But honestly, the most joy that I feel is when I'm in my purpose, and when I'm able to just create from this flow state where I'm like making the thing because it's just feels so purposeful and it's coming naturally, and it's just this moment of like just bliss of being like, I'm just doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing with the people I'm supposed to be doing it with. And that just is, I think, something that I try to experience and create that experience on all of my jobs. And some are more, some are less, but and yeah, just the joy of being able to do this. I love my work. I love being able to have that. I feel so privileged that this is my career. That's crazy. Like, that's nuts. I always just think about like little me would be like, that's so cool. That's your job. Like, you get to do that. And I think that brings me a lot of joy where I'm like, sick. This is sick. Like, it's awesome. It's terribly hard, but it's just sick. It's a cool thing to be able to do all the time.
Oh my God. I'm not crying. You're crying.
I think we get so wrapped up in, like you said, the day to day, and just like, again, social media, it can be like that comparison game that we know we shouldn't play. And like you mentioned, like not every day is perfect and whatever. But I think, like you just said, reminding ourselves, like, 5 years ago, I was not doing this. 10 years ago, I wasn't calling myself a director. Like, yeah, it's like, it's incredible. It's incredible just to take those moments and really remind ourselves of our journey and the little steps that we've taken to get better each day. And I see a lot of folks here who mentioned like this is their first time being here and they're an amateur or beginner photographer. Like, if anything, I feel like what Bethany says, you just got to do it. I really hope you all took away something from this, but I feel like for me, it's like the fact that, okay, yeah, whatever I want to do, I just got to do it. I just need to do it.
Like, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to channel their inner Bethany Mollenkof. I know I will be on my like, what would Bethany do? What would she say right now? She'd be like, look, little
Why
fear,
I
not?
buddy,
can't.
get out of here.
There's also space for everybody. Like, I know that it feels really competitive, and it is competitive and it's hard, but I also think that there is space, and there's space if we
Yes.
share, and there's space if we like make space for other people. And
Yeah.
so it's intimidating. It's a hard industry. It can feel very elitist. There's so many factors up against you, but if you recognize like there is a space for me and I will make that space for myself, I think I don't know, it's the process of it. You're never going to get to the end and be like, I'm the number one best photographer in the world. You're going to have an amazing journey. Like, the journey,
Yeah.
the experience of it, you know? So you just have to go on that journey, you know? Don't wait for it to be like, and now I've arrived. That doesn't happen. It's just, this is the process. This is it. And so, I don't know, have fun with it, enjoy it, feel purposeful, feel intentional. And I think it's really rewarding.
I was gonna ask you if there's any last words that you want to leave us with, but I feel like
I know, right? I was just like,
wait, what? Like, okay,
yeah.
morning affirmations with Bethany.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
I
That's
also
a
like
really,
do love to talk to people. So if people are like, oh my gosh, I have other questions for you, like, please message me. I try to be open and try to like support other people, because it's the people that have supported me that have pushed me forward in my career, moments I didn't believe in myself, things that I couldn't see in my work. Like,
Mm.
there's so many people out there that are willing and able and want to, yeah, just know that.
awesome.
the options there. I'm
Wow.
happy to help.
Wow, Bethany, I know it's just me and Polly, but like a round of applause that you can hear is so inspiring, so amazing. Honestly, like, thank you so much for kicking off this weekend. You have like beautifully set the tone for the rest of the weekend. So thank you again so much for sharing all of your wisdom, all of your, it just exudes from you, the joy of doing this, reminding us why we do it, reminding us like, that we are capable of doing it, going for our dreams, achieving those creative visions. So thank you so much for reminding all of us of that and inspiring us in this very authentic and genuine way. So thank you so much. You are a treasure. We will be, and so now while I make sure you look at the chat, I hope you're seeing the chat. It's like probably 200 messages since we've been talking. Yeah. But we will be starting the next class in just a moment with Haruka Sakaguchi talking about how to create impactful work that tackles issues through a conceptual lens. So a beautiful segue from what Bethany has started us off with, and with the community as direct participants. So for those of you who are asking a lot of questions about, you know, how do you find people? How do you engage with people? This is a great session too to stick around for that reason and many more. Again, we want to thank the incredible Bethany Mollenkof. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks for tuning in at like 7 a.m. We also want to thank our partner Photo Wings for helping make the essentials happen. Photo Wings' mission is to highlight and help facilitate the power of photography to influence the world, which is exactly what we're doing right here, which is exactly what Bethany is doing and all the speakers who we have this weekend. And as a nonprofit, they help photography to be better understood, created, utilized, seen, and saved. So, like I said, that's what we're doing here today and for the rest of the weekend. So stay tuned for more.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Bethany.
Hi, Bethany. Thank